but a lot of times both trans communities and non-trans communities say like, I just don't get this whole non-binary thing. Like just, I just don't get it. Or, I can't get used to they, them, theirs pronouns, let alone Z or using people's names. So I'm wondering how you all cope with that I don't get it response, or if it bothers you, or anything that you'd like to share around that I don't get it piece.
I think the hardest thing for me is that people who say I don't get it typically are the people that don't want to try to get it. So you're really hitting a wall, and it's really hard to knock down that wall that they put up. And so that's the hardest thing for me. But when it comes to pronouns, the way I tell people is like, it's like a name. You use the person's name that they want to go by. You use nicknames. Why can't you use this other version? Like, this is a pronoun. Name, like, they are basically like stand in for names. Why can't you use the correct ones? Like, it's just like another name for me. It's just like pretend it's a nickname for me. And that's the way I try to explain it sometimes, and like how much it means to me is to be like, this is one of my names. This is who I am. So that's the way I try to explain it to people.
It always baffles me, I think, like people are like, use the grammar argument because like it's been in grammar forever. Like we use it casually all the time. And I get like that it's different to use it for someone who you think you've gendered. And people use they all the time. Or, what did they bring to you? What did they say? This happens all the time. And we just don't notice it because it's so normal. But then when like we ask someone to do that, it's such a big deal. And it's exhausting. It's definitely like, cause like, I always have to be the person on internet forums or on Facebook to be like, hey, actually, I'm normal. Like, like, I know you don't understand, but like, every time someone says something like, I just don't get it, it feels like I don't want to get it. There are definitely moments where somebody's like, please help me understand. And those are the moments where I get really excited. Like, I'm honestly totally for that. Like, if somebody comes up to me and is like, I've never used this before, I'm learning, and I'm trying. And backtrack a little bit. It's different than when I tell people I use they and they say, I'm gonna mess that up. That sucks. But there's people who will say like, I really wanna learn more and I'm gonna make it my job, put it on myself to really do more for this. And those are the people that I feel closer to after that interaction and that I trust more because they're trying.
Yeah, something that, like an interaction with one person who is a survivor was like, they were like, I understand like why you would transition like from female to male, but then like, why can't you just like be a normal guy? And like, I don't know if this would work with people who are not survivors, but like for me, I was like, well, it's really uncomfortable being perceived as a man, like as the perpetrator and stereotypes, but like that was my experience, also that person's experience, and so like that is part of the reason I think I'm really uncomfortable being perceived as male, and that enabled that person to like understand it better, I think.
So. Majority negative experiences I have are with international friends or folks, because I totally understand the cultural differences and barriers to learn about like gender as non-binary or as a spectrum. So most of the time I introduce myself and then tell them my pronouns, and they will say, oh, what do you mean by pronouns? And then I have to go with like kind of one-on-one to tell them, oh, in the US culture, in majority different culture, people might not identify as binary, but I also have to explain like what's the binary. So it's kind of wobbly, you to go down and down and down, and then like explain everything, and then tell them like the differences between sexual orientation and gender identity. So you can identify as like gay, cisgender man. They said, what's that mean? Like, I'm getting identified as gay, cisgender male. So, because there's two different identities, and people just So I think the same as your like express, like when people actually ask you questions, that means they want to learn. They're willing to open to learn about it. So I think that's a good communication. Like, you know, you just be patient and tell people what you know, and like maybe share some of the experiences and some of the resources you have. But sometimes I also have encounter with people who, you know, like totally reject everything you talk about, like gender, like they just like totally stick with like gender is binary. So the time like I try to open, but sometimes they just not ready for the conversation. I'll get, okay, I understand, I respect, then I will move on. So I mean, but then sometimes I end up really bad, really shitty, but most of the time I was like, okay, be patient. But be honest, sometimes I feel really like tired to be the one who educate people, learn about it. So I apologize. I mean, like, I feel like I should be patient all the time and tell people and like communicate with people. But sometimes I'm just like, no, not today. Today I'm not educator. So, but majority time is very good. Like to to communicate with people like who willing to learn. So for me it's also good things to educate myself too, because I'm talking or communicating with them. So
yeah, I want to add that, like, from what I said, there's definitely nuance. There's so much nuance to this. Like, someone who comes up to me and says like, educate me, and like demands that's different. Or someone who says, educate me, I'm here to listen, and then like every step of the way is not listening at all, and is like bucking everything you say, and is saying, oh yeah, but this said this about that, and you're not like that, and or let me pull this article out that says like people who are non-binary are crazy, and it's just like there's so much that can happen, and that isn't good. So there's the line there, right? And it's just be compassionate, be kind, be open to hearing, like listen, like actually listen. We don't do that a lot. And so actually sitting there and really taking yourself out of it and just hearing someone else and trying to empathize is challenging.